Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpa trubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So we're continuing today with our study of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, second chapter. And we've got almost all the way through text 20. We read Prabhupada's purport. We want to talk about the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport and then go on from there. So before we start, we'll say like this: Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So here we are going through the stages of development of Krishna consciousness. This is quite empirical, it's clinical. You can do the experiment on yourself and you can see that it will work. And so these different stages, especially in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the verse began, Ado Shraddha, beginning initially with preliminary faith and then practicing Krishna consciousness and what you should see happening one after the other on the stages. That's why it's a science. This verse we'll talk about little, the Ado Shraddha from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So here in 1-20, Evam prasanam manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tatta vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Thus the mind becomes joyful and satisfied on attaining rati. Finally, prema develops, accompanied by the appearance of complete detachment. The devotee then experiences the Lord's form, qualities, pastimes, powers, and sweetness. So I'll read Prabhupada's translation. You can see there's a little difference, and we can explain the difference. Prabhupada's translation to this verse went like this: thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness. The man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. So that's Prabhupada's translation. So Prabhupada thus established in a mode of unalloyed goodness. Bhanu Swami says this refers to on attaining rati. Now, rati means love, affection, feeling for Krishna, and when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur purport, he says, by this method, with the development of asakti, the word asakti means addiction. You're that attached to Krishna, it's like addiction. First there's a taste and then there's addiction, asakti. So he says, by this method, with the development of asakti, with worship of Krishna at every moment, rati then appears, and then he puts in parenthesis, pranasa manasaha. Excuse me, prasana manasaha. This is the mind becomes joyful, satisfied, because, and this is rati. Rati means love, affection. Then prema develops, and along with that, there will be the appearance of complete detachment. So here you can see this is like a clinical activity, that you do this, this is what will happen. If it doesn't happen, go back and see what you're doing wrong. Because this is the experience. And if you're not sure what you're doing wrong, then ask somebody who is hopefully more advanced than you are to give you an explanation of why this is not taking place. Because Prabhupada uses this word science. Science is his way of translating the Sanskrit word vijnana. The word jnana means knowledge. And vijnana, the vi in the beginning is in Sanskrit a kind of all-purpose intensifier, so that vijnana is knowledge that you have direct experience of. Otherwise, you may hear testimony from others, or may gain it otherwise by reading a book, but vijnana is direct experience. So this is what happens with Krishna consciousness. I remember when Prabhupada was first coming here, there was a Janis Joplin song about Alice in Wonderland that said, and the refrain was, "Feed your head." And she was asked on NPR radio, when you sing "Feed Your Head" in that song, are you telling the youth of America to take drugs? And she said, yes. You know what to say about that. So this was, so said, the song went, one pill makes you larger and one pill makes you smaller, but the pills your mother gives you don't do anything at all. This is because there's here's this experience, you know. So when Prabhupada came at that time, we heard religion, we heard about God, but Prabhupada said, this is what you do. You don't have to take these drugs, because the trouble is when you took these various, drugs like that, you felt like you learned something, and then it wore off and it was gone again. So with one of the early advertisements for Krishna consciousness was "Stay high forever, no more come down." But here Prabhupada is talking about science and experience. So if you do this and we do it correctly, and persevere a little bit, and don't think that you got it all together yet. And if you're doing it with consultants of more advanced devotees, they can tell you, no, try this, try that, see if you're doing this, doing that, the other thing. So you should see that the mind becomes joyful and satisfied because you have come to this rati, this feeling for God. So his using this term rati is this pranasa manasaha, satisfied in mind or joyful in mind. Pranasa is joyful in mind. That appears, and then it says finally prema develops. That's ruchi, asakti, prema. accompanied by the appearance of complete detachment. That's the other thing that goes along with prema. There is detachment. Jnana vairagya. Vairagya means detachment, so one should see that you lose all taste for anything material without rati, with this taste, this higher taste, as we used to call it in our book, The Higher Taste, a recipe book in our restaurants. Without rati, there could never be constant detachment from objects of material enjoyment, because you've got to have something higher. You can't just give it up. So if you begin to get some a feeling for Krishna, and through the even feeling just from the activities of devotional service, that detachment can become constant, and then there will be the, as he says here in the purport, satisfaction of the mind. Thereupon, prema to Bhagavan appears, and he says, refers here, Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha. Let's see, that's the second half of the first line, Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha. This is a prema to the Lord. From then arises realization. See, jnana, when Prabhupada talks about realized knowledge, or the science of self-realization, realize means something that you directly experience. It's your realization. It's not just some inspiration that comes from nowhere, it's your experience. And then what happens? The Lord's form, qualities, pastimes, powers, and sweetness, all those things become successively able to be experienced by those things that become obvious. The desired result of bhakti has thus been explained. Accompanying results were previously mentioned. This is the previous verse. Janayat yashu vairagyam jnanam cha yad arhaitukim. This causeless knowledge and detachment. You notice these two things, vairagya and jnana. They go together. A lot of times, jnana vairagya, knowledge and detachment. So the idea of sense gratification is that it blocks your experience of transcendence. It's really not, how much sense gratification may you have? Enough to be healthy. That's Prabhupada's, just to lead a healthy life. You don't have to suffer like crazy. We don't have to go to the Himalayas. He's given us what we have to do. So our austerities in Krishna consciousness are not so bad, because bhakti is very powerful. But still, there's some vairagya is necessary. And then these things will happen. And here also they are mentioned, he says, with the phrase, appearance of vairagya, mukta sangasya. This happens, this complete detachment. Sangasya means material attachment. So mukta, you are free from all material attachment. So that's the second half of this this verse there. Yeah, the Prabhupada has a nice purport to Madhya 23, 18 and 19. This is yeah. He says, let me just read the translation first, then we'll do the purport. When the seed of ecstatic emotion for Krishna fructifies, the following 9 symptoms manifest in one's behavior. Again, this is science. You should see this. Forgiveness. That is to say, you don't hold grudges against anybody who may have done something bad to you. You concern that time should not be wasted. You don't want to waste a minute. Detachment. Absence of false prestige. Hope. Eagerness, like an eagerness for devotional service. A taste for chanting the holy name of the Lord. Attachment to descriptions of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and affection for those places where the Lord resides, that is, a temple or holy place like Vrindavan. These are called anubhava, subordinate signs of ecstatic emotion. So bhava is ecstatic emotion here, and anubhava. These are signs of this. They are visible in a person in whose heart the seed of love of God has begun to fructify. So now we can look at this purport. Do you have it? Or?
It's on this one. This is the only purport for this verse.
This is the only purport. Oh, okay. So there's no more. Okay, here. So yeah, this is, he just says they're found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Okay, that's good. So these are the things that one should see happening. This is what Prabhupada says. These are the reliable signs of bhava. Not that that you should, because Prabhupada said these are, because otherwise people fake them sometimes in order to gain some adoration or big donations. These things so they can cry on cue or whatever else like that. So these are what you should see for, see as that actually manifests in behavior. Okay, I guess we can go on now to the text 21. Where is that? Okay, here it is. Okay, text 21. Vidyate hridaya grantis chidyante sarva samshaya shriyante chasya karmani drishta evatmanishvare. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. That's here. There's, when one sees the self as master, also in other recent versions, there's other translations, because this has been Atmani Ishware, another translation that has been given in one of our editions of the Bhagavatam. One sees oneself and one's master, because you have these words, Atmani Ishware. When one sees the self as the master, when that Atmani, the self should have a capital S. The self is the master, the Lord. And when it says here, the newer translation in the Veda base is one sees oneself and one's master. If you look at Bhanu Swami's translation based on, he says, just on this one, he says, ignorance is cut and all doubts are destroyed. See, vidyate, pierced or cut, and all samshayaha, all doubts are destroyed. And then his way he translates it as Atmani Ishware, on seeing the Lord in the mind and with the eyes. Yeah, that's seeing, right? Having seen this day, and Ishware, then all karmas, the karmani is Kshiyante, destroyed. So he says this is the experience of seeing the Lord in this way. So that's the other one. Yeah, so let's read the purport. This is Prabhupada's purport here. Attaining scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead means seeing one's own self simultaneously. So this is another way of translating this this phrase that people have difficulty with. Again, when he says scientific knowledge, means direct experience. Vijnana means seeing one's own self simultaneously. These together, the real self. You see who you are, you see who God is, and you see who yourself is in relationship with God. As far as the identity of the living being as spirit self is concerned, there are a number of speculations and misgivings. The materialist does so these are all the doubts that we have accumulated from our different so-called miseducations, I guess you could call them. The materialist does not believe in the existence of the spirit self. And empiric philosophers believe in the impersonal feature of the whole spirit without individuality of the living being. So here he's denoting the Mayavadis. But the transcendentalists, in plural, affirm that the soul and the supersoul are two different identities, qualitatively one, but quantitatively different. So there's some overlap. When I've realized my spiritual identity, there is a oneness with God because we're the same. Right now, if I think of myself as matter, then God is spirit and you can't get close. But if you're a spirit and you go to spirit, then you're qualitatively one. But he says quantitatively different. The spirit soul is 1/10,000th the tip of a hair in size, and God contains everything. So Prabhupada mentions here these two empiric philosophers, the materialists and what he calls empiric philosophers, but the Mayavadis. There are many other theories, but all these different speculations are at once cleared off, swept away, right? Cleared off. As soon as Sri Krishna is realized in truth by the process of bhakti yoga. Again, realize means direct experience. Sri Krishna is like the sun, and the materialistic speculations about the absolute truth are like the darkest midnight. As soon as the Krishna sun is arisen within one's heart, the darkness of materialistic speculations about the absolute truth and the living beings is at once cleared out. Notice that sun arises within the heart. So that's where Krishna is. He's in our heart. He's with every jiva. There's also a Krishna there. And the experience is like sunrise. Everything becomes illuminated. And so then for the darkness of material speculations about the you can, oh, now you know. In the presence of the sun, the darkness cannot stand. And the relative truths that were hidden within the dense darkness of ignorance become clearly manifested by the mercy of Krishna, who is residing in everyone's heart as the supersoul. By this it means relative truths, the individual. We are related, we are relative to other things. So this becomes, the definition of the absolute truth is that which being known, all other things become known. But in relation to the absolute truth. So the revelation of Krishna becomes a revelation of Krishna and his energies, internal, external, marginal. All of these energies also become known. So the people who just know the material world very well, if they don't know it in relationship to Krishna, they miss a big part of it. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:11, the Lord says that in order to show special favor to his pure devotees, he personally eradicates the dense darkness of all misgivings by switching on the light of pure knowledge within the heart of a devotee. Nice little metaphor there. Huh? Just switches on. He can do it. He takes charge of illuminating the heart of his devotee. That's how it happens. It's not, blear-eyed wisdom by midnight oil. This is how it happens, a different kind of pursuit of knowledge. He illuminates the heart of the devotee. He comes to know everything, he the devotee, comes to know everything of the absolute and the relative truths, because relative truths are there also, related to the absolute truth. The devotee cannot remain in darkness, and because a devotee is enlightened by the personality of Godhead, his knowledge is certainly perfect. This is not the case for those who speculate on the absolute truth by dint of their own limited power of approach. Perfect knowledge is called parampara, or deductive knowledge coming down from the authority to the submissive oral receiver who is bona fide by service and surrender. So here, this is the process that at first you won't have this experience, but you start with this parampara, one after another. That's what parampara means, which comes down. It's not by your own trying to, deductive is deductive, not inductive. Inductive knowledge is always imperfect. All cows are black. You can say that because all you've seen are black cows, and then one brown one comes, it's wrong. This is always known as the problem of induction. Scientific knowledge depends on induction. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and somewhere you stop counting, and then you say, all of this or that. And then, but one comes, it's wrong. So that's the problem of induction. Deductive knowledge coming down from the authority to the, because Krishna knows everything. He can see all whatever, maybe that, all crows are black. That's the usual example. All crows are black birds, And the white crow, he sees that one too. Or if there aren't any, he knows that, Otherwise, we are all scrambling. So how is the all receiver? What makes bona fide? He says service and surrender. So these things, this service and surrender, are principles of, four regulative principles. These are principles of knowledge, not merely moral principles, but they are principles by which we are able to have direct perception. Pratyaksha avagamam, Krishna says in the Bhagavad, gives you pratyaksha right in front of your eyes. And so Prabhupada says, one cannot challenge the authority of the Supreme and know him also at the same time. He reserves the right of not being exposed to such a challenging spirit of an insignificant spark of the whole, a spark subject to the control of illusory energy. The devotees are submissive, and therefore the transcendental knowledge descends from the personality of Godhead to Brahma, and from Brahma to his sons and disciples in succession. This process is helped by the supersoul within such devotees. So it comes, first of all, far away from Brahma and down here, but also the supersoul is also there. So that it's not that you're just talking about something heard long ago. That process is helped. And he says that is the perfect way of learning transcendental knowledge. I mean, after all, Brahma was inspired by Krishna, how to make the universe. That's a pretty good position. So he knew all that. So this is coming down from him. And then we can ourselves to become within the same group of direct perception. This enlightenment perfectly enables the devotee to distinguish spirit from matter. I am Brahman, that means I'm not matter. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind, which is some ways better news. This enlightenment perfectly enables the devotee to distinguish spirit from matter, because the knot of spirit and matter is untied by the Lord. Oh, that's how it happens, huh? You can't try to untie it yourself. You're the problem, you're not the solution. But the Lord will, if he sees this what you want, he unties the knot. This knot is called ahankara, your wrong idea about yourself. I mean, the word ahankara simply means I maker. But when Prabhupada always says false ego, because it's your identifying, I'm black, I'm white, I'm male, I'm female, I'm old, I'm young, and so on, all those different designations. This is the knot that's called ahankara, the I maker, your wrong idea of I. This knot is called ahankara, and it falsely obliges a living being to become identified with matter. Notice the word obliges. You have hardly any choice. As soon as this knot is loosened, therefore, all clouds of doubt are at once cleared off. One sees his master. So this is where the idea of this translation, one sees his master, because you are not alone in your body. You are a spirit, and there's also You're Atma, and there's also Paramatma. And you are of the same nature. Both are Atma. Therefore, you're not alone. And therefore, how close is Krishna to you? Much closer than you are to your material body or your material mind. So he's there. So therefore, one sees his master and fully engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, making a full termination of the chain of fruitive action. In other words, the only desire is now, let me satisfy Krishna, do what he wants. If I'm eating something, I'm eating for Krishna. Whatever I do for Krishna. That chain of fruitive action that creates future material births is finished. In material existence, a living being creates his own chain of fruitive work and enjoys the good and bad effects of those actions life after life. Good karma, bad karma. But it's karma all the same, so it's all bad, really. But as soon as he engages himself in the loving service of the Lord, he at once becomes free from the chain of karma. His actions no longer create any reaction. Interesting, huh? Actions create no longer any reaction. So that's and so where are we? This is 21. Yeah, good. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So again, his translation is Banu Swami. Ignorance is cut, and all doubts are destroyed. On seeing the Lord in the mind and with the eyes, all karmas are destroyed. He says, the knot in the heart, ignorance is cut. This is a reflexive verb form, karma kartari, which indicates that destruction of ignorance is not the main result sought in bhakti. I don't understand the use of this reflection. I don't know enough Sanskrit to tell you about that, but anyway, so the destruction of ignorance is not the main result sought in bhakti. All doubts, such as thinking that the attainment is impossible, are destroyed. Having seen the Lord, who is the soul Atmani, you see in that Eva Atmanishware, that Atmani is in that last compound, Eva Atmani Ishvare. Having seen the Lord, who is the soul Atmani, all karmas are destroyed. Or, there's another way to read this Sanskrit compound, or the Lord being in the mind, Atmani, and then being seen directly, all karmas are destroyed. He's inside and outside at the same time, and it's the same one. Thus, both the spurti means, the word spurti means a sudden eruption experience of something. Thus, both the spurti of the Lord in the mind and direct appearance to the eyes are indicated. So he shows up two ways, inside and out. That's the spurti. The spurti of the Lord in the mind and direct appearance to the eyes. So now I'll skip this Sanskrit quotation here. This is a verse. Bhanu Swami here has this footnote where he says that this is actually a text by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It's not quoted from somewhere. And I'll just, because we're running out of time, I'll read just the translation. The 14 steps are as follows. Mercy of devotees, Satam Kripa, the mercy of devotees, service to the devotees, Mahat Seva, faith, Shraddha, surrender to the Guru, Guru Padashraya, desire for worship or hearing, Bhajaneshu Spriha, Bhakti, that word is the clearance of anarthas, anarthapagamas, tataha. Then nishta, ruchi, asakti, rati, prema, seeing the Lord and experiencing the Lord's sweetness. So that's a more detailed of the steps on our path, 14, given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Just in case you wanted more details, here it is. Okay. We can stop now, and next class we'll do 22.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This whole chapter is so powerful with all Prabhupada's commentary, and sometimes I feel like if I had to choose one chapter,
this is it.
This is really,
Yeah.
really the chapter. And then especially, I always found fascinating here of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's outline of 14 stages.
That's right.
And adding on that sweetness of the Lord at the end is really quite interesting. So we'll open it up now, and if anybody would like to ask a question, offer a reflection, something that struck you as kind of interesting or sparked something in you, please go ahead and either use the raise hand button, or you can type your comment or question into the chat box. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and do the same. You can type your comment in there. We'll try to read it off from there. Kendra Prabhu has a comment. He said, creates his own chain, that quote, creates his own chain, reminds one of the character of Jacob Marley in Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
That's true. And as we're waiting for some questions to come in, I especially appreciated that phrase, the bona fide by service and surrender, that was in that last purport by Prabhupada, that there's some implication that action is required, not just a mentality of surrender, but that mentality leads to actual action and vice versa. And also, I had a little question about the process of bhakti. It seems like one can kind of stall out a bit at an anartha-nivritti, or maybe right before that, I don't know. An anartha-nivritti itself could be quite a long stage. Is it that once one reaches nishta, can you visualize that as kind of like reaching a bit of a peak, and then the rest of the stages kind of fall one after another of a little bit more rapidity? Or I don't know of how to.
I don't know that I can speak for everybody, you know.
It seems like once you get there, you have some momentum or something.
I mean, by definition, you reach the stage of nishta. It's very rare that you fall back. How fast you advance further may be depend on other circumstances. But for ourselves, we should always be eager to take the next step and do everything that we can do in our present circumstances for our spiritual advancement. And if there's something missing, Krishna will provide it. He's not in the business of baffling us, but rather uh, uh, doing it for us.
Okay. And just one more comment about Anartha Nivritti. It seems like that's also a stage of a bit of a reality check of how much is in there to be cleaned.
Yeah, well,
and
that's
requires maybe a more humility of just
yeah.
surrendering to Krishna.
Yeah, you have to become humble once you see all the, because if the light of Krishna goes on, if it's like going into a dirty room and turning the lights on. Oh my God, I thought the place was clean. Now look at that, all this stuff here.
But there's also a certain comfort in that as well, of like, okay, you know, like this is where I'm at, you know, rather than trying to bluff.
Yeah, you don't have to bluff anymore. And okay, I'm a fallen soul. Dig it.
Anindita has a comment or question. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Such a class. Thank you, Gurudev. It was really nice to see you and hear from you. These verses are so encouraging. Like you're saying that it's a very scientific process, and if we do it right, then it's clearly telling us what to expect. I really liked what you said about how we're not alone, and Atma and Paramatma are together, and both are Atmas. So actually we're much more closer, Krishna is much more closer to us than we are to the mind and the body. That was a nice meditation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing that out. And your wife asks, please address how mercy is involved with the scientific steps of attaining bhakti. Good topic.
Yeah, that is because we are being made of mercy. And in some ways, the difficulty that devotees have taken to give us Krishna conscious is for us a measure of how much Krishna wants us back. That all these devotees would, when you see, for example, what Srila Prabhupada went through to bring Krishna consciousness to the West, and then when I wrote this little book about Srila Prabhupada's position, you could see how it was the work of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. These people went to such huge efforts to take what was seemed to be a little obscure religion of a certain number of Bengalis and turn it into a world religion and spread it all over. It's amazing the difficulty they underwent, and they did quit. You know, whenever there was an obstacle or something, they kept on going, and they took it so far, and then the next person picked it up and took it further, and then the next person. And how we can pay them back is ourselves trying to become Krishna conscious. And there's two things, you know, become Krishna conscious yourself and do something to give it to others. I mean, the word bhakti means not just to divide, but to share. You distribute it, you know. And when one does something to give it to others, it also increases for you. So you're all everybody benefits, and you can see how much the world needs Krishna consciousness. I mean, look at the mess people have made and are continuing to make, and are hell-bent on doing some more damage while they're in the process of this. They really need our Krishna consciousness to do something. And if each of us in our own position increases our own Krishna consciousness, and then we'll also be able to find different ways and means of sharing it with others and helping others. So that we should all try to do that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question, if I may.
Go right ahead, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you for your service, Shraddha Mataji and Maharaj, my obeisances. My question is related to the following passage, related to 1 to 21, where I find Srila Prabhupada writing, perfect knowledge is called parampara, or deductive knowledge, coming down from the authority to the submissive oral receiver, who is bona fide by service and surrender. So my question is, we know that in Kali Yuga it's difficult to find submissive oral receivers who are bona fide by service and surrender. But still, the religious duty for Kali Yuga is the congregational chanting of the Maha Mantra. So my question is, what is the connection between the congregational chanting and the creation of submissive oral receivers who are bona fide by service and surrender? Because they are not very common in our days. Is it that the Mahamantra, the Yuga Dharma has the power of creating this kind of people?
I think so. But the way it starts is by a Sankirtan. It's kirtan that is shared with others. It means together. It also means, by the way, complete kirtan. Two things. San is together, and it also means full or complete. And that's how it starts. And anybody can join in. The mantra is simple because it's only 3 words. So I maybe mentioned before, I had a professor when I was in graduate religious studies who said the real question is not whether God exists, but is God available? And I had the answer when I encountered devotees, because he's available simply by Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Because God and God's name are the same. So anybody can actually have some access to the Lord by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And if you do it, and see, in the beginning you may be doing so many sinful things, but you don't know enough to even be offensive. You think all the devotees are great souls. You think, you know. And so in the beginning, there's like, because people used to have this theory that at first God makes it easy for you, and you has his mercy so that you really feel some effect right away, but then he takes it away and you have to do the work yourself. But I think the real thing is at the beginning you didn't know enough to commit offenses. you just did it, you know. Then after a while you got mad at this devotee, or you got critical about this or something like that. You became a fault finder. But he is very accessible in this form of chanting. And if you have at least a good relationship with one devotee, and you're interested to go further, then you can take the next step and the next step and the next step. But even if you don't get very far in this life, you won't. You still have got a toehold in transcendence, and it will continue. So one doesn't know what the full effect will be later on. but many, many people are. I just see some things that are happening in the world that I don't know how to see anyway. Like, for example, being a vegetarian used to be really weird, and people thought you would die. Now it's common as anything. I mean, that's not so much, but it's there. And why is all of a sudden being a vegetarian like really, something that everybody says, oh yeah, I'm trying to give up meat, even if they're not, and they want to do it. So I think gradually our regulative principles will become more and more available to people in that way, because they become gradually purified. And if some preliminary interest in it, just not much, but they can take birth again as a human being and keep on going. So you won't see all the results right away, but they will be coming.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. And Shakti also has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Shakti.
Hare Krishna, that was a really nice class. Loved it. I do have a question. I heard that it's only in the Kali Yuga that by chanting the name of Krishna that you can get love of Godhead. But if you were to do it in the other yugas, like the other, it's just like the Sat yugas and stuff like that, that you don't. Why is it just it's just in this Kali Yuga that you do get love of Godhead by just chanting Krishna's names, and the others not?
I've never thought about that before. I can't really say that I know why. There are different yuga dharmas, but and almost all of them involves some kind of chanting Krishna's name, whether it's if you do sacrifice, there's names of God in that. If you do elaborate deity worship, there's mantras that go along with that. So it's there, I think, in some form or another for the different yuga dharmas. But here it's just made very, very simple and easier to do than you would have in earlier yugas. But I don't really worry about those other yugas. I just worry about our own time now, where I can actually have hopefully some good effect on things.
I see.
Thank you for that question, Shakti. And a last call. Any other questions or comments, or any reflections, anything somebody would like to share? And if not, we'll go ahead and close out today's session. Thank you, everybody, for joining. A special thank you for Jai Dvaita Maharaj. Thank you for always so regularly joining. It's always nice knowing you're there. And Yadanath and Akanta Bhakti say thank you to you.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. We'd start time with text 22. Is that right?
Okay.
Okay.
We'll start next Sunday, text 22. And of course, we'll do Krishna book reading this Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay.
And Adi Devi says, thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai. Wonderful session again. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.